All right, so today we're diving into something I know a lot of you are working on. Uh, Achieving a band 7 or higher on the IELTS speaking test.
Yeah.
And we're going to be focusing on everyday vocabulary,
Yes.
which might sound a little basic, right?
It does.
But it's actually super important.
It is.
And it's something that can really make a difference
Huge difference.
in how natural and confident you sound.
Especially in part 1 of the speaking test.
Yeah, particularly in those part 1 conversations
Absolutely.
where the topics are very familiar.
Yeah, day-to-day stuff.
Right. And I think it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you need to use all these like really high-level vocabulary words.
Yeah, big fancy words.
Exactly. But what we're seeing in the source material is that it's actually more about using the right words in the right way
It is.
and sounding natural.
Natural and engaging.
Right. And there's a great example in one of the sources
Yeah.
that compares a simple answer like, I like food,
Right.
to a more engaging response like, I'm passionate about trying new cuisines, especially exotic dishes that challenge my palate.
Much better.
Much more interesting.
It's not just about the words themselves. It's about how you use them.
Absolutely. And it shows you can use English well.
Yeah, it demonstrates a much stronger command of the language.
Definitely.
So, okay, let's dive into some specific areas where everyday vocabulary can really shine.
Okay.
And the first one that jumps out in the source material is daily routines.
Yes.
Because you're almost guaranteed to get a question about your daily routine in part 1.
Pretty much.
So how can we make those answers stand out?
Well, instead of just, listing off to think about adding some details and color, using vivid verbs and adverbs,
I like that color.
to really bring your day to life for the examiner.
Okay, so the source gives some examples like hit the snooze button or grab a quick bite.
Yeah.
So instead of just saying, I have breakfast, you could say, I usually grab a quick coffee and pastry on my way to work.
That sounds way more natural, right?
Yeah.
Like someone who actually speaks English?
Exactly. It just flows better, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Like you're actually having a conversation.
Okay, so we've got our daily routine sounding snazzy.
Snazzy.
What's next?
Let's move on to hobbies.
Hobbies.
Yeah, this is your chance to show off your personality a little.
Oh, I like that.
But instead of just listing your hobbies, tell the examiner why you enjoy them.
Yeah.
You know what they mean to you.
Okay, so instead of I like hiking, I could say something like, I find hiking incredibly invigorating. It's a great way to clear my head and enjoy some breathtaking scenery.
That's perfect.
So we're using those strong adjectives again to create a
To
connection.
bring those hobbies to life.
Okay, and I'm noticing a theme here.
What's that?
It seems like a lot of this comes down to using descriptive language
It does.
to make our answers more engaging.
Yeah, you want to paint a picture for the examiner.
Okay, and the source also mentions food vocabulary. I mean, everyone loves to talk about food, right?
Wait.
But again, it's easy to fall back on those basic terms.
Like good or delicious or...
Yeah, or yummy or tastes good
Yeah,
or...
exactly.
So how do we spice things up a bit?
So instead of good, try using more descriptive words to describe the taste and texture.
Okay, give me some examples.
Think about it. Was it savory or tangy? Was it crispy or melt in your mouth?
I like that.
Think about those details.
And I actually found it interesting that this source suggests looking at food blogs and recipe websites
Oh, yeah.
for vocabulary inspiration.
They're a gold mine.
I never would have thought of that.
You'd be surprised how much you can learn from them.
I guess those descriptions are meant to make you want to eat the food.
Exactly. And they use lots of vivid language to do that.
So next time I'm browsing recipes online, I'll remember that I'm actually studying.
You got it.
Okay, so we've covered daily routines,
Yeah.
hobbies,
Yeah.
food.
Mhm.
What other areas does the source highlight?
Well, travel is another big one.
Travel.
Yeah, it comes up all the time in the IELTS.
So how can we talk about our travel experiences in a way that really impresses the examiner?
Again, it's about using descriptive language to create a vivid picture.
I see a pattern here.
Yeah, it's all about bringing your language to life.
Okay, so we need to paint a picture with our words.
Yes. And be specific. Don't just say, I went to France.
Right.
Tell them about the charming cafes and cobblestone streets of Paris.
Oh, I like that.
Or the breathtaking views from the Eiffel Tower.
You're really making me want to book a trip right now.
Exactly.
And there's a phrase in the source that I really love. It says, immerse yourself in local culture.
Oh, that's a great one.
It really captures the essence of meaningful travel.
It does.
It's not just about sightseeing. It's about experiencing a place deeply.
Absolutely. And using those kinds of phrases shows the examiner that you have a sophisticated understanding of the language.
Right. It goes beyond those basic travel vocabulary words.
Yeah, you're demonstrating a wider range of vocabulary, and that's what's going to help you get that higher band score.
Okay, so we've covered some key areas where everyday vocabulary can really make a difference in the IELTS speaking test.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious about the how.
The how.
How do we actually expand our vocabulary?
Yeah, how do we learn those words and actually use them?
Right, because it's one thing to know a word,
Yeah.
but it's another thing to actually be able to use it naturally in conversation.
Absolutely.
So that's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
You're doing good.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
We'll be back.
All right, so we've talked about why everyday vocabulary is so important for the IELTS speaking test.
Yeah.
But now I want to know how to actually expand my vocabulary.
Okay.
How do you actually learn all those words and phrases and make them stick?
Well, the source material actually has some really good tips for that.
Okay.
Like one thing it talks about is creating these topic-based word maps. Yeah, have you ever tried those?
I don't think so.
So basically, it's like a visual way to organize vocabulary.
Okay.
You start with a central theme, like travel, for example, and then you branch out with related words and phrases.
So like transportation, accommodation, food, things like that.
Exactly. And as you come across new words, you add them to the map.
So you're building this kind of vocabulary web.
Yeah, it's a really good way to see the connections between words.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah, and it makes it more engaging than just, looking at lists of words.
But what if you're not a visual learner?
Right. Well, the source emphasizes that the most important thing is to find what works for you.
Okay.
But the key is active learning. Really engaging with the words and making connections.
And speaking of connections, the source also talks about this idea of contextual learning.
Yeah.
What is that exactly?
So it's basically about understanding how words are used in real-life situations. Like, instead of just memorizing a definition from a dictionary, you see how the word is used in a sentence, in a book, in a movie.
So you get a better sense of the nuance.
Exactly, and you're more likely to remember it that way.
So how can we actually practice contextual learning?
Immerse yourself in authentic English content.
Okay.
Like listen to podcasts, watch movies, read books.
So anything that exposes you to the language in action?
Exactly, and pay attention to how native speakers use those everyday words and phrases.
Okay, so it's not just about studying vocabulary in isolation.
Nope. It's about seeing how those words behave in their natural habitat.
Oh, I like that analogy.
It's like observing animals in the wild.
Versus seeing them in a zoo.
Exactly. You get a much richer understanding.
So I'm guessing this means ditching the flashcards.
Well, flashcards can be helpful for some people, but you don't want to rely on them exclusively.
Right. You need to see the words in action.
Yeah, and that's where shadowing can also be really effective.
Shadowing.
Yeah, have you ever just tried that?
I've heard of it, but I'm not sure I know how to do it properly.
So basically, you listen to a native speaker, and you try to imitate their speech as closely as possible.
Like you're their shadow.
Exactly. You're trying to match their pronunciation, their intonation, their rhythm.
So you're not just repeating words, you're really trying to embody their way of speaking.
Yeah, it's a great way to improve your pronunciation and fluency.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah, it's fun.
Do you have any tips for making shadowing more effective?
Well, first, choose a short audio or video clip, something manageable.
Okay.
And then listen to it several times. Really pay attention to the pronunciation and intonation. And then start repeating along with the speaker. Try to match their pace and rhythm.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to exaggerate.
Exaggerate.
Yeah, really try to mimic the speaker's facial expressions and everything.
That sounds like fun.
It is. It can feel a little silly at first, but it really helps.
So we've talked about word maps, contextual learning, shadowing.
Yeah.
What other strategies does the source recommend?
Well, one of the biggest things is to actually use the words you learn.
Right. Don't just let them sit there in your notebook.
Exactly. You need to integrate them into your speaking and writing.
So how do you do that?
Well, you can set yourself daily challenges.
Oh, like what?
Like, try to use 5 new words in conversations throughout the day.
Okay.
Or write a short paragraph using a specific set of vocabulary words.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a good way to make it a habit.
And it's more fun than just, rote memorization.
Definitely. And you can also get creative.
How so?
Well, you could start a vocabulary journal.
Okay.
Or join an online language exchange group.
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah, you can practice with native speakers.
So there are lots of different ways to make vocabulary learning more engaging.
Yeah, the key is to find what works for you.
And to be consistent.
Absolutely. Consistency is key.
But I have to admit, sometimes motivation can be a challenge.
Oh, yeah.
What do you say to someone who's feeling overwhelmed or discouraged?
Well, first of all, I'd remind them that language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
It takes time and effort.
And it's okay to have setbacks.
Of course, everyone hits a plateau at some point.
So how do you break out of a language learning rut?
Well, sometimes all it takes is trying something new.
Okay.
Like explore a different genre of books or movies, or try a new language learning app.
So shake things up a bit.
Exactly. Sometimes you just need a fresh perspective.
That's a great tip.
And remember to celebrate your progress.
Oh, yeah, those little victories are important.
They are. They keep you motivated.
So every time you use a new word successfully or you notice an improvement in your fluency, give yourself a pat on the back.
Exactly.
Because you're making progress.
You are.
So we've talked about a lot of different techniques for expanding our vocabulary.
Yeah.
We've got word maps and shadowing and all these things. But I guess what I'm wondering is, how do we actually put all of this into practice?
Right. How do you actually use these words?
Especially in a situation like the IELTS speaking test, where you're feeling a bit nervous.
Yeah, the pressure's on.
So what does the source say about that?
Well, it really emphasizes the importance of practice.
Okay.
And not just any practice, but like deliberate practice.
What's deliberate practice?
So it's like being really intentional about it,
Okay.
Focusing on your weaknesses, pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
So not just like passively reviewing vocabulary lists.
Right. You got to actively use the words.
And I think that goes back to what you were saying earlier about language learning being a marathon.
Yeah, it's a long game.
It takes time and effort.
It does.
And there are going to be times when you feel discouraged.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do you stay motivated?
Well, I think self-awareness is really important.
Okay.
You need to know your strengths and weaknesses so you can focus your efforts effectively.
So if I'm good at describing things, but I struggle with idioms,
Yeah.
I should spend more time practicing idioms.
Exact.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it's also important to celebrate those small victories along the way.
Oh, yeah, the little wins.
Because they keep you motivated.
So, like, if I use a new word in a conversation and it sounds natural,
Yes.
that's a win.
Absolutely.
Okay, I like that.
It's all about building that confidence.
And speaking of confidence,
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember that the IELTS examiner isn't expecting perfection.
No, they don't.
They know that you're a language learner, and they're looking for your ability to communicate effectively,
Exactly.
not your ability to, like, recite a dictionary.
So it's okay to make mistakes.
Right, and to hesitate or search for the right word.
As long as you can get your message across.
Okay, so it's not the end of the world if
Well-
I can't think of the perfect word right away.
No, not at all.
I could still do well on the test
You can?
as long as I can communicate my ideas clearly.
Precisely. And those moments of hesitation,
Yeah.
they can actually be valuable learning opportunities.
How so?
Well, they show you where the gaps are in your vocabulary, so you can focus on those areas.
So instead of getting flustered,
Right.
I can see it as a chance to learn.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that mindset shift.
And remember, the more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become.
Yeah, practice makes perfect, or at least progress.
Exactly.
So to wrap things up,
Mm-hmm.
what's your final piece of advice for our listener who's working towards that Band 7+ score?
I would say embrace the journey.
Oh, I like that.
Language learning is a lifelong pursuit.
Yeah, it's always evolving.
It is, and there's always something new to discover.
So don't get discouraged if you hit a bump in the road.
Keep going.
Keep practicing, keep learning.
You got this.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you to our expert for sharing your insights.
My pleasure.
And to our listener, best of luck on your IELTS journey.
We're rooting for you.
And remember, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, leave a comment below.
Tell us about your favorite vocabulary learning strategies.
Or any questions you have.
We're here to support you every step of the way.
Until next time.
Happy learning.